Hi, my name is Dennis Spurling. I'm not a lawyer, but my daddy is.
Yeah, if you've been hurt in a car accident, call my daddy.
No need to scream and yell like a little kid.
Yeah, no yelling.
My daddy will fight for your rights.
Yeah, fight for your rights.
If you've been involved in a car accident, call my daddy, returning Dennis Spurling.
Hello, I'm attorney Dennis Spurling. If you've been injured in a car wreck, call me at 713-229-0770.
Call my daddy.
Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. I appreciate it. Let's keep it going. Donate to the Super Chat. Donate to the PayPal. Donate to the Cash App. It's your contributions and your donations that'll cause for this platform to grow. Let our voice be the voice, the preeminent voice in Black America.
Men, and you're trying to dictate to us what we should do, what I should be telling these men. You came to my page to tell me that I need to tell these men that they need to come to the table with a group of women who have the highest rate of abortion, who have an increasing incarceration rate, who have the highest rate of divorce, who have the highest rate of STDs, the highest out-of-wedlock birth rate, who have known around the world for being strong, independent, and don't need a man, who have, for the past 55 years, used television, radio, mass media of all sorts, movies from The Color Purple to Stella's Got a Groove Back to tell the world that the black man is nothing. And you want me to tell these black men who trust me and love me and appreciate my opinion because I'm truthful, that, oh yeah, brother, now it's time to go back to the table because Ivy Johnson said so. That's what you want me to do?
Yeah. We're terrified.
What's up? Welcome to the broadcast. Let me state off top from the beginning, this is going to be one long-ass broadcast. It's going to be very fact-intensive. So if you do not have a good, attention span, you're going to probably go to sleep. I'm just going to tell you now, because what we're going to do is try to answer some questions about what's going on right now in Black American culture and why we are headed in the direction that we are headed in, and that is extinction. Now, for the purposes of this conversation, understand that there will always be African people on this planet. There will always be people of African descent in the United States. But in reference to the people who comprise or who compose what we call African Americans, that culture is toxic and it's dying. And I'm going to do my very best to interpret one of our great minds, one of our great teachers from the past, his understanding and his explanation thereof. That said, my name is Dennis Spurling. I'd like to welcome you all to the broadcast. They call me Uncle D. I'm also the Blizzard King, because I tell the cold-hearted truth. A lot of people can't handle that. A lot of people want to live in a fictitious world. They want to feel like everything is going to be all right. Unfortunately, I am not privy to give that to you, because I accept reality, the pain of reality, the harshness of reality, because I know reality, and knowing where you are in that reality is just like having a map and knowing exactly where you are on that map. If you don't know where you are on a map, you can't read that map, you can't read the reality for what it is, guess what? You're going to be lost. And in order for Black American people to find themselves, there's a dose of reality, several doses of reality. Matter of fact, a whole heap of reality that we need to just go ahead and accept. Nevertheless, I want to give a big shout out to all my people in the chat room. Big shout out to everybody in the wrench mob. Hit the wrench. All my guys, hit the wrench button. Let me know you're here, my wrenchies. Let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to call them, if I'm the Blizzard King, these are the Frost Lords. Shout out to all the Frost Lords up in here. If you got a wrench, you're a Frost Lord. Let's see. So we got who we got up in here? Where my Frost Lords at? We got Tristan. Thank you so much. Also, big shout out to my members, Black Man Swimming and Arrowhead. Thank you so much. Also, wrench members, Broken Blade, Wrench Turner, Chukwuegwe. Shout out to my brother from Nigeria, Daryl J, Broken Blade. I think I mentioned Simple Shit TV. Who else we got up in here? Cody Marshall, Daryl J. Again, I keep Joan J, Clarence Everett. Shout out to my Philippine connection, Urban Eagle. Who else we got up in here? Man, we got so many people. Tristan Turner. Post Nut Clarity. Boy, that guy with his name, boy, he is outstanding. Clarence Everett. So shout out to you guys. Again, I want you guys to understand something. First of all, culture is culture is like the operating system that runs a computer. It's the operating system that runs a group of people. It is comprised of their language, their shared language. It's comprised of the way in which they communicate, the courtesies, their rituals, their roles, their customs, relationships, their manners of interacting, their thoughts, values, expected behaviors amongst each other, and practices, okay? One of our greatest minds, Dr. Amos Wilson, gave a lecture many years back, and he talked about that. So what I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to do a play-by-play. Basically, I'm going to let his lecture play. It's going to play at a fast speed because it's an hour long, but I want to only dedicate 30 minutes to it. And so that being the case, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cue him up here real quick. And if you guys can hear it, hit the number 1 button. You can find this. And so we're going to go ahead and get this thing started. Y'all hit the number 1 button. Let me know you can hear me. And this is the voice of Dr. Amos Wilson. Those of you guys who don't know, Dr. Amos, you know Dr. Amos Wilson. He should be right up there with Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. He was an American psychologist. He was Afrocentric. He was a Pan-African thinker. He was a scholar, professor of psychology at the City University in New York. He was from Harrisburg, Mississippi. He was born in 1941 before during Jim Crow, I should say. And so he experienced in America that many of you young folks are not aware of, okay? Again, this is a picture of Dr. Amos Wilson. He died in 1995. I remember I was a junior in college at historically Black university, Grambling State University at the time. I remember when he passed away. He was so young. He was only 53 years old when he passed. But nevertheless, he was a Morehouse graduate, a great man, a brilliant man. One of his greatest influences was the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who himself was a Pan-African. So this brother's resume is legit. If you don't know who Dr. Amos Wilson is, just type his name in YouTube, and just indulge yourself, listen to what this brilliant mind, one of our ancestors, had to say. That being the case, let's go ahead and get this show on the road. Hit the number 1 button if you can hear me, fam. I am going to go ahead and get this thing queued up. And again, it's going to be playing at twice the speed. So let me go ahead and do this and get this thing going here. All right. I apologize. We got a little quick. These are my two boys here. They just walked in. So they just came from jiu-jitsu. They have a big tournament coming up. And so they've been doing tournament style practice. Hello, sir. And hello, sir. How you dudes doing? Say hello to all the people in YouTube land. All right. All right. So I'm gonna let them go and we're gonna start. Hey, boys, what does daddy tell you? What kind of women does daddy want you to marry? What does daddy always say? What would I prefer to you to marry? Tell me.
African descent.
Yes, yeah. And daddy wants you to, why do I want you to marry women of African descent?
Because
I know I have selfish reasons.
Because we want our children to look like you.
Not necessarily me, but I want to be able to see the faces of our ancestors, my ancestors, in the faces of my grandchildren. You see? Because our ancestors come back to us in the faces of our children. You see? And you know, and that's selfish of me. And I know you boys grow up in a different world where, you know, it's all this multiculturalism, and I get it. I understand that. But that is my preference for you all. And I've explained that to y'all, right? Yeah. But nevertheless, I appreciate you young men for taking the time to talk to everybody. But nevertheless, thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to let y'all go. And please go and do the things that you have to do for the evening. God bless you both. May the Most High. I know y'all getting hit in the head today. They was getting, but don't worry about it. There's some aspirin in there for y'all. Praise God. Hallelujah. Shout out to A. Wilson's Ghost. Yeah. So anyway, shout out to my two boys. But there's a reason, and I'll explain that. Now, again, I tell my boys all the time, my preference is for them to date and marry African women, women of African descent, women from the diaspora. That is my preference for them. And when I finish with, and here's the thing, and Dr. Wilson is going to explain this, and I'm going to get this going. I'm excited about this because, you know, I don't care if y'all don't like it. This is for me, okay? Well, I don't care, but I know it's for you guys too. But basically what I'm saying is you have to teach your sons and your daughters to have a preference for things that are African. And why do I focus on Africa? Okay? Because I'm black. Okay? Now I might not be the blackest of black, but I'm still black. You understand? And so when you gear your appetite towards things black, and when you focus on things that are African or of African descent or black, then what that means is your life is easier. Because when you think of black, what you think of dark-skinned people with big noses like Uncle D, with kinky hair like me and a scruffy beard. That's what you think of. And so it causes for you to love yourself and love your Africanness. When you begin to reject your own for someone else's culture and someone else's place, guess what happens? That's where the self-hate begins. And you've seen that recently on my broadcast. Some of you were here the other night and you saw a young lady who was raising children, black children, who manifested such a high degree of hate for blackness and for her Africanness. It was disturbing, which is why we're having this broadcast tonight. Nevertheless, without any further ado, let's bring up the great, brilliant mind, our good brother, Dr. Amos Wilson, and I want you guys to just sit back and indulge. Again, I'm going to stop from time to time. It's playing at a faster speed, okay? Because I don't want a copyright strike. So y'all just check it out. Let's go. Let me know if you can hear it. If it's an echo, let me know it's an echo. I'll fix the echo real quick. Let's go. Okay, so what the brother just said was culture is a set of rules and ideals necessary for meeting needs of the people. You don't just claim a culture just because you like it. Like black people, you out here, you got somebody saying there's no sound. Is there no sound? Are y'all not, you're saying there's no sound? That's crazy. Hold on a minute. Let me, That should help. No sound? Let me know if, but basically what Dr. Amos Wilson just said, okay, I'm gonna fix it. I got you. I'm working on it. All right. Just turn your volume up. But basically what he said was culture helps meet the needs. Okay. The needs of the people, and the objective is to get the culture into the next generation, right? It answers questions. That's basically what your culture does. And what's the question? How do we survive into the next generation? Listen. Can y'all hear now? Are y'all hearing it now? Let me know if you can hear it. Somebody, y'all are telling me you can't hear it. Man, that's a damn, hold on, man. This is terrible, man. I had all this planned out, but don't worry about it. We're gonna do what we got to do to get it in here. Let's try one more time. I'm gonna see if I can get this in here. I want you to make sure we can hear it. Okay, let's try this again. Let me know if you can hear now.
Which is the whole point of what? It's the whole point of the book. Not the first part, but really the second part. Looking at our culture and our history critically, he then, and looking at our situation and where we are today in the history and cultures, he then draws out a map for a plan, a way for us to what? Get out of our situation and to restore African civilization and to restore African people. But it's at that point most people sort of move on to something that you must through of ideas. Culture is not just ways people sing and dance, they eat and how they dress, and rituals and so forth that they perform. It are based on sets of ideas and values that relate the basis for culture. Cluckarn and the culture.
Okay, it's your set of ideals and values that explain. Somebody says, I know it's going fast because I don't want to get a strike. Y'all got to listen, baby. You got to listen up now. Okay, I'm gonna give you the play-by-play. Just you got to look faster so I don't have to, repeat myself when I'm doing this. Your eyeballs got to look faster. Y'all saying the sound is terrible. The sound is fine. But either way, what he's basically saying is that culture is a set of ideals. Okay, just get it. Just get it.
All the and he defined culture as all the historically created designs for living, irrational and non-rational, which makes it as potential guides for the as a result of history for living, and provides guides for its members, guide for behaving, as a set of the guides for designing, for guiding.
Your culture is a guide for your behavior. In other words, the people in your culture, they use that culture to determine. It acts as a guide. And remember, what is the objective of a successful culture? To get the people to the next level, to get the people to the next generation. Okay, that is the objective of the culture. Keep listening.
For guiding the behavior of its members, culture provides standard, proper, cognitive, emotional, and behavioral conduct. Culture provides a set of norms and concepts of what is to be expected to exist, why we expect them to exist. It's an actual experience, theological, meaning that it essentially exists in beliefs and customs and expectations. We receive our culture as a result of, as a part of our social heritage. To the degree that the individual identifies or is at one with this culture, and to the degree to which the members of a culture identify with it, culture is represented in the mind.
What he basically said is that you're a product of your socialization, how you're socialized, who socializes you. There are a lot of people who are born, let's say you're born in, you might be African, but then you come to the United States and you've been Americanized. Well, yeah, now you're not culturally African. You may be racially a sub-Saharan African, but your culture is American because it's dependent on how you're socialized. So this is the importance of culture, and it keep listening.
Of its people. In other words, we have to recognize deeply that culture cannot exist outside of ourselves. It owns our bodies as a people, and therefore, to a great extent, it is psychical more than it is physical, more than it is behavioral, more than it is just ways of dressing. Ultimately, a culture must be represented in the very minds of a people. Mental entity.
So here's what he's saying. Basically, what he's saying, you can dress like an African griot, but if you're born in America, then, you know, and your mind is American, you're not an African. You're culturally, you're an American. That's basically what he said. Doesn't matter what the exterior is, it's who you are on the inside. That's what he's saying. Okay, y'all keep listening.
That a people can identify with a culture. A culture is a way of thinking, a way of attending the world, of perceiving the world, of classifying and categorizing the world, of ordering the world, of processing information, and of evaluating the world. The Europeans decultured us or distorted our culture. We're also saying then that the Europeans have distorted our mode of attending the world, our modes of experiencing the world, our modes of classifying and categorizing the world, our modes of processing information that comes from the world. So there's no little wonder then that we are having problems in what some people call education, particularly as it has been Eurocentrically designed, that our children are perceived as having problems in thinking skills and math skills and science skills and so forth. Because ultimately, culture provides you with a frame for thinking. It provides you with a structure for organizing information, for classifying information, for evaluating information, you see, for processing information. And when you distort a people's culture, then you distort their capacity to appropriately organize information and deal with it.
All right. So what Dr. Wilson is basically saying is, because we are Africans in a Eurocentric American country, our way of learning is filtered through that programming. And so because of that, we're impeded by a lot. Now, here's what you got to understand. There are some who can get the A's, who can get the great grades, who can do well in this country. They have then appropriated Eurocentric culture as an African, as a person of African descent, this is still a foreign culture to you, largely because your culture and your race they play off each other. So if you're an African man with a Eurocentric sort of worldview, yeah, you'll be able to be successful to a certain extent, but you're still going to be European or Europeanized. And so you're not going to be your African self. And not everybody can do that. Not everybody can be a dark or brown skin, a light skin, brown skin African person and then work their way through this European system. Because remember, the history, the way things are perceived, it's all Euro friendly as opposed to African friendly. So what does that do to a person, right? And especially when it may be openly hostile to your Africanness, especially when you read history and some of these other things. So let's keep listening. I know it's boring. Hit the number 1 button if you're bored. I'm cool with it. Hit the number 2 button if you're not bored, but let's keep going.
And this is what has happened to us. This is the reason why I say again and again that the problem of education in terms of the having school, they only expect themselves as educators. Our children may have been thinking logically, categorizing, classifying in terms of vocabulary, but are really not academic cultural problems, and they are the result of political interactions. Because in transforming our sense of who we are and what we are, and in transforming our culture, so was our thinking and so forth transformed as well. This is why ultimately our people will have to be solved in terms of cultural transformation, not just in terms of educational technique, you see. And this is what the white strata lay on us. We're going to discover finally that great reading technique. Children can learn almost in any way you teach them. But it's about technique. It must be a part of a total cultural structure. Right. And the children must come. Is going to give what is to be taught. So, if what they're learning is really not relevant to their situation and their circumstances.
All right. So what Dr. Wilson is saying is, you can tell these kids, hey, you need to learn this, your math and your reading and all this different stuff, But if it doesn't relate to their existence, they're not properly motivated to move forward. They're not properly motivated to say, well, this is important to me because it doesn't relate to their existence. And so that's why he's saying that when dealing with why the reason that we have a lot of issues in the Black community with education is because a lot of people don't see, hey, how does this help me in my current condition? And so Dr. Wilson explains this. I will give you some other aspects later. Let's keep listening. Hit the number 1 button if you can hear it clearly.
And so we have to understand very much how culture itself structures the thought processes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some of you who are saying, but there are those of us who knew nothing about African culture and we got all A's in school and so forth and so on. Got people and do these at the price of alienation.
Yeah.
As the gentleman who's Carter G. Woodson wrote, about 30 years to get over that Eurocentric education. What is he talking about? To a degree,
I can tell you exactly what he's talking about. I have been practicing law for 23 years. It took me 9 years to get this education. Now, I am in the business of civil litigation, which means you eat what you kill. It's not about the group, it's about the individual. Just like many things that distinguish the European way of thinking from the African way of thinking, in many other countries also, because it's not about the family, it's not about us, it's not about it's not about we, it's about me, myself, and I. So even now, there are those who will say, hey, Dennis, why are you talking to the public? Why are you speaking to the public? Why are you trying to defend Black men? You should be going for yourself. It's inappropriate for you as a lawyer to be speaking up publicly on behalf of Black men. Why? Because my Eurocentric education and your Eurocentric indoctrination says this doesn't benefit you, even though it may benefit the group. You're sacrificing yourself and your reputation and your time and your energy for people you don't know. But again, I'm giving you a demonstration of what the difference between African culture and European culture, or difference, really it's American culture, because America is about the me, myself, and I. There are some European countries that do have the unit first, the family first. So understand that I experienced this. And then also there's a certain level of isolation. You don't come up in a group. You don't go through education. You're not educated in a group setting. You're educated on your own. You study on your own. You go take some tests. You pass the bar. You practice on you. You might work with different people. You work with whoever pays you the most. You see, it is capitalism. It is the individual. It's the rugged individual. It is the me, myself, and the I. It is not the we. And so this is the fundamental difference between American culture and African culture. And we as African people have been Americanized. Now, you guys are saying, well, Dennis, what does this have to do with Black people and why our culture is messed up? Just hold on. Let's listen to the expert, okay? And we'll be back in a minute when he finishes, and I'm going to break it down for you, baby. I'll break it down like a 6-4 Chevrolet on block sitting in your grandma's driveway. Keep listening. Hit the number 1 button if you can hear me.
That African-centeredness, without that African sense of culture, without an African-centered intentionality that determined why he was learning and for what reason he was learning and how he was going to use his learning in the interest of African people. He adopted an alien culture, as many educated Blacks have had to do. In adopting the alien culture and adopting the alien outlook and adopting alien values, success.
Yes. You can be extremely successful in the United States if you're willing to adopt the American culture. If you're willing to go all out in the capitalism, you too can be successful. That's why you guys, when you hear me say things, I'll often say, I'm considered successful, right? You guys look up to me, you listen to me because I'm considered successful, because what I've realized is that true success is not how much money you have in the bank. There have been times when I've had hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank, and I'm laid up in my bed and my children aren't here. I didn't have a decent woman with me. I didn't have family I could go to. Because remember, when you have all this money, right, there are others who are more individually based. You become In this society, you become prey. And so you're forced into isolation. When you get a certain level of education, when you get a certain level of what we call American success, you have to be careful who you interact with. You're no longer part of the community. You're part of a pyramid, and you're getting higher and higher up on that pyramid. And so the people below on the pyramid, on the bottom of the pyramid, they look at you and they want to climb over you, and they'll take your things from you so that they can take your spot. Whereas in an Afrocentric culture, in an African culture, in many of the more traditional Asian cultures and Latin American cultures, it's about the family. So you come into the expectation that what I get for myself, I will share with the family. I will share with the family union. I will share with the community. That's not what we have here in the United States. So let's keep listening. Now, remember, we are African people, and we have this what? We have this American culture being infused with us, and there's no other place where our people can come in and refresh our African culture. What do I mean by that? And I'm going to get to this a little bit later, and I'll talk about a little bit more detail. The difference between us and, let's say, the Filipino people. The Filipino people have a country called Philippines. Every day, new Filipinos are born. New Filipinos are immersed in their culture, their language, their communication, their courtesies, their rituals, their roles, their customs, their relationships, their practices, expected behaviors, values, thoughts, mannerisms, or manners of interacting. So if there's a Filipino community here in the United States, oftentimes there are new Filipinos coming in to that community in the United States, even though it's a foreign land, reinforcing their Filipino culture. Okay, when Jamaicans come to Black America, they don't reinforce Black American culture. Matter of fact, we see them as a separate group. They're not Black American, they're Jamaican. They might be Black in America. There are Nigerians and Ghanaians who are Black in America, but they're not Black American. Matter of fact, we have a pretty new designation called foundational Black American to further delineate us and our culture from our other members of the African diaspora. So what does that mean? What that means is we're constantly losing people from the fringes of our culture, and there's nobody coming in to reinforce the culture. So our culture is now being permeated by American culture, and there's no protections on that. There's no reinforcement. And so we're getting further and further and further away from our family-oriented, family-centered African culture, which is what we have, which is very similar to the Filipino culture. It's very similar to the other indigenous cultures, Latin American cultures. And hopefully now you're starting to see a picture being painted. But let's continue listening to the Honorable Dr. Amos Wilson.
Within the European academic system, you see. But the unfortunate thing about it is, once you adopt that structure and that mode and orientation of thinking, you can only work within.
Mm-hmm.
You can keep if only you work for us as a scientist. You cannot take that thought and outside of that structure and use it. Some of those who so-called succeeded in this system have had to face. You see. Classic instruct and in what advance those structures.
Mm-hmm.
The European system has this economic system set up in such a way that when you try to use this structure kind of thought outside of the system, it won't pay you. And often on the page, we get caught up within two worlds.
Right. Basically, what he's saying is, even the system, this me first, me system, even the finances associated with it. If I got $1 million, everybody doesn't have $1 million. I have $1 million. I'm an individual. If I have $1 million and I'm part of a family unit and we share everything, then everybody has access to that $1 million because it's a family. And so you see now there's a fundamental difference from African culture and some of these other cultures that put the family first and put the family unit first. You see, it's not about the individual, it's about the group. You got $1 million, or you got everybody lives in this house. We have a house that's a 5-bedroom house worth $500,000, and we all can live in here. This is our house. But as an American, you say, no, this is my house. It's my wife's house and my kids live here. This is our house. Them, they all say, or you may have guests over. Yeah, this is my guest. This is not their house. So it's a way of seeing things. There's a practice called sand amongst the Dominicans, and they have the same thing in Latin America. It's a way in which they practice saving. What do I mean? What do they do? Well, let's say, for instance, you have 10 families, and each family gives $200 a month. At the end of every 10-month cycle, basically every month, one of those families gets $2,000, okay? Because there's 10 families. So family number one gets $2,000 in January, family number two gets $2,000 in February, all the way up until you get to, let's say, October, and then you start the cycle over again. They don't get any interest from that money. All they're doing is putting $200 in. They're saving $2,000, not getting any interest from it. So some of you are like, well, why would you do that? So why don't you just put the $200 in the bank? Why don't you? Because you may not save it if you were just going to put that $200 in the bank. But because of the social pressure associated with, I can't let the community down, I can't let my family down, I can't let my greater community down, I've got to make sure this $200 is a priority and it goes to this person for the purposes of sand. It gets done. Because remember, their courtesies and their rituals and their customs and their shaming and the way they interact with each other, which would be their relationships, their shaming, their way of forcing each other together requires that it puts more pressure on them to do this. So it forces them to say, when they otherwise might take a few dollars in, a few dollars there, go down to the local $1, the 99-cent store and spend, a couple $100 where they wouldn't otherwise, So this is they can do that because they have those strong cultural ties. Most of you are saying, well, why would I give somebody $200 a month and give them $2,000 just to wait? What if the person who got the money the first month decided to opt out and now they don't want to contribute? Well, remember, these cultures are different. There's social requirements that are a lot more demanding, a lot more, there's a lot more pressure to conform. In other words, that wouldn't happen because there's punishment associated with these cultures. See, the reason that culture works, or the only way that a culture really can work, is that you have to have an ability to reward and punish people in that culture. But if you have an individual culture, I don't need anybody. I'm strong, independent, and I don't need nobody. So you can't punish them. We're not going to help you collect firewood because you didn't help us fish today. You don't need each other. So this is part and parcel of why the Black American community is failing right now. But let's keep going. Y'all still with me? Hit the number 1 button. I know you're bored as hell, but we getting jewels in here.
Socially, culture patterns, the ways in which its members relate to each other, interact with each other, perceive each other, and the ways they organize, develop, institutionalize, and apply their human potential in order to adapt to issues. Ultimately, as I said again and again, culture is about solving problems. But we got to learn, as I've indicated before, in a cultural way, creating power in a cultural way requires relating to each other in a particular sort of way. Mm-hmm. Implies interacting with each other in a particular sort of way and perceiving each other in a particular sort of way. I've indicated under other circumstances that individuals do not have power. Power is the result of the nature of social relations between people. People choose to interact with each other to make power. You can go back a few years and see how little white boys could order grown black men around. Were they big enough to beat them? Were they big enough? Did they have enough power to knock them down? No, they didn't. But it was because those little white kids were in a structured framework and had behind them a set of structures and strategies. That because white people had chosen to relate to each other in a particular way and interact with each other in a particular way and interact with us in a particular way, even a white child could come out and express power over black folk. But the power was not inherent in the child, but it was inherent in the culture and inherent in how that culture was designed and structured. And it's out of this. And this is what I told you before about an economic system. An economic system is not the mere system.
So what Dr. Wilson just explained was there was a time in the and remember, Dr. Wilson grew up in he was born in 1940s in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. For those of you guys who are overseas, Mississippi was like the bastion of segregation. Mississippi and Alabama were always neck and neck to see who could be the most racist. All right. in Georgia was probably right there running third at least, or at least a close tie for second. So he grew up in a time where a little boy, a little white boy, could tell a grown black man, he could call him boy and command him to do things. There was a time when black men could not look white men in the eye for fear of being punished, because that was considered an aggressive act, looking another man in the eye. So even a little white boy could command a grown man who he could not beat in a physical fight to do stuff, or to avert his eyes, or to step off the curb into the street, into the mud. And why is that? Well, it wasn't, clearly it's not that this little boy is powerful, but there was a system of law set up that says if this person here who is from this race and this culture, or this in this culture, if this person of this race gets out of line, then we come together based on our laws and we punish that person. And so that system and those institutions were set up to exert power over people. This is the culture. This is what they mean when they say this is how we relate to each other. Now, that same white boy, that white child would not be able to do that to a white man, because the culture was set up differently, and that wasn't how it was supposed to be raised. That's not how they relate to each other. So what he's saying is there's power when you have a culture and a group of people. Those people have power when they come together and they set up these institutions to empower themselves. All right, let's keep going. And big shout out to, I know y'all bored because y'all ain't contributing nothing to the super chat, but that's all right. We pass out bricks and bats over here, and we need understanding. Okay, understanding is very important. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said this: our people, for lack of understanding. I get that quote right. But shout out to P. Arma, and I think that was actually a quote from the Bible. But let's keep going. Hit the number one button if you can hear.
Of money. Economic systems existed prior to money. Money as an instrument of economy has come late in the history of man. And yet we've had economies for hundreds of thousands of years before money came into existence. So economy must have something to do with the way people choose to cooperate with each other and relate to each other. It is out of this. And it develops. You see, so if you have a culture, the culture is going to...
So power, your economy, how people relate to each other, it's going to make your culture stronger. So if your people relate to each other poorly, then you can expect to have a weak culture and a weak economy amongst those people. Are we getting close yet? Do y'all feel the furnace fire yet? Are we getting close to where we are in modern day Black American times? Let's keep listening.
Going to provide patterns of relating and interacting. It's these patterns of relating and interacting that permits a people who belong to a culture to solve the problems that confront them. So you see, again, it's just where you say socially. It is very important to keep in mind that let's talk about identity. Identification process. This identification process is a process in which new resources are existing parts of behaviors are modified to some extent.
I'm sorry, guys. We got Alphonse Sullivan. Would you like to come in? He says, you are stepping out of your league. Dr. Amos Wilson was a brilliant man and has left an enormous amount of knowledge for our people. You are a hypocrite. Why don't you come on in here and then you tell us, brother? I'm going to put the link in the chat room, because what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to talk to my people and explain to them why the culture is the way it is. Now, I'm sure you and all your doctorate degrees, Alfonso Sullivan, I'm sure you can come in and explain to our people exactly what the good doctor said. So I'm going to put this in the chat room. And I want you, as I play, I would love for you to come in and explain to us why I am hypocritical for playing this video and explaining in layman's terms what this gentleman who I am treating as an expert is saying the same way I would do if this was a jury trial. Okay, since you're such a brilliant person and you got a lot to say and you want to be a heckler, come on in, Alfonso, and make sure you cam up, because we want to see you. And we want to know everything about you. Shout out to Project 8020. This is what we do. You are not going to allow to be a coward and say things in the chat room. So come on in. The link is in the chat room. We want to hear what you have to say. Now, you're saying that I'm a hypocrite. I yet to understand why I'm a hypocrite for simply trying to explain to my people why our culture is dying based on what one of our loved experts had to say. Nevertheless, you'll be presented with an opportunity to do that. So come on in, Be a man. Man up, Alfonso. Let's talk about it. Shout out to Mr. 43TX, and a big shout out to my man Carlton Ward. Okay, see, there's never a problem. I want y'all to hear me on something. There's never a problem when I'm in here talking shit. Okay, when I'm calling the lovely ladies on their foolish behavior, nobody ever has to say anything about that. But me with my multiple master's degrees and doctorate degrees and degrees in this and law and experience, it's a problem when I start interpreting what our great ancestors had to say. Okay, this is a problem because, see, what you have here, folks, they don't mind me being an attack dog, but they don't want me to be a teacher. They definitely don't want me teaching Black American men anything other than how to, fly overseas and have sex with a whole bunch of loose women. That's fucking fine, right? That's fine, right, Alfonso? That's all good, right, Mr. Sullivan? But when I'm here talking about bringing one of our ancestors from the past, that's a fucking problem to you. So who really is who is really the problem here? Who's really the house Negro? Who's really the sellout? That's what I want to know. Okay, so the link is in the chat room. If you don't come in, you're a fucking coward. Okay, that's what I have to say. So there's the challenge. It's been laid down. Make sure you cam up and first thing we're going to do, we're going to ask you about your education. That's the first thing. All right. Nevertheless, excuse the profanity, but we got assholes here, and I embrace the assholes as they want. A lot of people want attention, but we'll continue. Let's hit the number 1 button if y'all can hear me. Let's get back to what we were doing. Hit the number 1 button if you can hear the sound.
As a result of subjection to direct or indirect conditioning procedures, all cultures condition the people that belong to them. All cultures ultimately behavior. We want everybody to do right just because it means doing right. And this is what I said earlier when we talked about these conspiracies and these people. Like, you're not going to win this game if you don't have a means of neutralizing people and rewarding people, you see, and controlling people. The reason why, as I want to say.
All right, basically what Dr. Wilson said is, in your culture, you have got to have a means in which to reward people and to punish them when they don't do the things that are necessary to push the culture forward. Okay, so here we go. Oftentimes, you guys who are in the red pill community, right? You know, you talk about shaming language, female nature. That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's like a grain of sand on top of a sandcastle that you're building on the beach. There's a whole study of sociology that explains how human beings interacted with each other up to a very recent period of time. Shout out to Master 036. Big up to Brother Show. Yeah, big up to Brother Amos Wilson. So basically, this is how we were socialized. The way in which women forced other women to conform was through shame and guilt. So when you see women utilizing shame and guilt to force women into doing behavior that they feel is necessary to push the culture forward, or to that's allowed by the culture to push the people forward into the next generation, then you begin to understand the context in which it's used. Dusty Nuts, shout out to you. You said, good seeing you continue dropping gems. Every night at St. Kevin was the king of accountability, your de facto king of passport movement. Nah, brother, I'm not, man. I'm happily in a relationship. I've been chilling. I ain't been on vacation in a year. I'm just your Uncle D. You know what I'm saying? I love you guys. I want to do my very best while I'm here educating you guys and helping you guys become the best men you can be. And one of the best things is helping eliminate some of that blindness, that deafness, that dumbness that we have, that ignorance that we have. And so that's why I do this. And one of the things you need to understand was, why is our culture dying like this? What's wrong? Why are other people's cultures existing, and they're able to deal with this country and this onslaught? And what's our issue? So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm using one of our great minds to do it. I could have simply highlighted what he had to say and told you, but no one is as eloquent and brilliant as Dr. Amos Wilson, who again is a trained psychologist and professor in his day. So that's why I'm letting his play. But thank you so much for that compliment. All praises to to the Most High. Continue listening, okay?
The very first thing that we must do if we are to transform our children.
Okay, so shame and guilt. Okay, so I lost my train of thought. So basically what you have, women use shame and guilt. Shout out to Be About It, Peace and Pleasure. Shame and guilt is what women use. So what happens when a woman loses, what happens when a group of women lose their ability to be shamed? What happens when they can pretty much do whatever they want and the people of their culture say nothing about it? What happens? What happens when the fathers or the people in the community can no longer discipline the children, the offspring? What happens? Well, you have chaos and you have whoredom. There was a time when a girl came into her womanhood when she was 12 or 13 years old in the village, not the village, but back, in the prehistoric era, okay? For thousands of years, people roamed around in groups of no more than they would go to about 150, and that was it. That was a sustainable group. And so there needs to be stability in that group. So what happens when you introduce a young woman who is just now coming into age, who is fertile? What happens when you introduce her to that group and there are males around? Well, she has needs and those males desire her. So then what happens? Now you got those men who may be attached to other women and families using their resources and their money and their time, not money, but their time and energy and resources to try to do what? Deal with this young lady. Or if let's say they get her pregnant. Now what? Now she has a child that this other person, this man who may have children in another family is responsible for taking care of. So this is why people got married early. And shout out to Firestorm and shout out to Duwaynet Amin Ra. They got married early for a practical reason. They would pair this young woman off who was ready to give birth and with a man. Okay. And now he's responsible for her. She is the property. He is responsible for taking care of her and providing for her needs. More importantly, she is no longer allowed to do what? Go and mate with all the different men in the community. Now, what happens when those women are allowed to date? There's no shame anymore. There's no structure. These young women are now allowed to mate with all the different men in the community. You got chaos because now they're having babies by this one, babies by that one. No particular man is responsible for taking care of them. They're destroying homes because the resources and attention he would use for his what we would call wife is now being diverted to the side chick. So this is why cultures have traditionally paired off men and women to go off and be on their own. Even in situations where you have polygamous relationships, still this woman was paired off with somebody. So her sexual needs and her needs as a woman will be taken care of. Now, moving forward, what happens when the men in the culture or people are no longer allowed to discipline the children, no longer allowed to keep the children in line? You got what you got going on right now. The children are running amok. What do they do now? This is what we're dealing with. And this is what Dr. Amos Wilson just pointed out. Hit the number 1 button if you can hear me.
And we must become their primary rewarders and punishers. Mm-hmm. We must determine the conditions under which they're socialized if we want to create the kinds of people we need to solve our problems. You are not going to solve your problems giving it the control of your children over to other people. And yet we sit around here hoping every day after putting us into the faces of white folk, into the faces of our enemies, that these people by luck or some means will happen to be the kind of people we need for ourselves. The very point and process of education then will educate them to benefit whom? It's not you. Not you. Yeah. You must bring your...
So basically what he's saying, by surrendering your children to a Eurocentric educational system, they're going to they're going to teach them how to be workers, not entrepreneurs. They're going to teach them how to be good employees, not their own bosses, because we need more employees, not a bunch of bosses, right? That's what the system is set up to do. The system is set up to perpetuate itself. The system is set up to create more human beings that will help keep it going through taxes, through military, all these different things. So why would an education system set up to benefit an American, European-based sort of system do a proper job at educating people of African descent? That's what Dr. Wilson is saying. And even though we can't avoid that, you hear what you heard my sons in here earlier? I hey, one of the first things, son, remember your lineage. Remember you're an African man. I would prefer that you marry an African woman so that we can see the faces of our children. I can see the faces of my children see the face of my ancestors and my grandchildren. What I did right there is just explain legacy and the importance of legacy to my sons. And if my sons love me and respect me, they will always keep that in their mind. I'm helping them develop the taste for what I want them to be. You see, if I'm feeding my sons McDonald's all the time, guess what they're going to want to eat? McDonald's. But if I'm feeding them the yams and let's say we have a yam farm and I'm constantly feeding my sons McDonald's, they're not going to eat my yams. They're going to eat McDonald's. But if we have a yam farm and I'm feeding my sons yams and the whole neighborhood, the whole community is eating yams and the kids get used to eating yams, guess what? Our yam farm is going to be very productive. It's going to make a lot of money and we'll be able to keep that going so the money gets recycled in the neighborhood. The money gets recycled in the community. Most of you black folks here in America have no idea that they have cars in Nigeria manufactured by Nigerians. They have car manufacturers in Nigeria. Just like you can get a Lexus from Japan or a BMW from Germany, you can also have a car imported from Nigeria. But because because that's not what you've been fed, that's not what you're used to, your idea of reaching a higher social status is to get you that BMW or that Mercedes, because this is what you've been fed. This is why when he says you got to teach your own people to feed off those things and need the things that keeps your culture going. How do you relate to each other? What are your customs? These are your practice. These are your expected behaviors. But see, the problem is, brothers, and I'm going to talk about this a little, we don't necessarily see ourselves as African enough. And that's something that we got to deal with. But let's go ahead and keep it going. Shout out to the guy in the black. He said, Nat Turner asked, who wanted freedom? All 1,000 said they wanted freedom. And then he said, how many are willing to do anything to get it? 900 step forward. We already know what to do with the other 100. Okay, shout out to you. Thank you so much for the super chat. Let's keep it going.
Your children under your own control, and you must be in control of the conditioning process. This is what it's about. If you don't have control of that, then really you're not going to have control of the children. Because identification with the culture, becoming cultured or enculturated, is the result of a culture approving and disapproving, of rewarding and not rewarding, and to ultimately say that it really fits the culture, and ultimately the individual, him or herself. And this is what identity is about. It's about pan-cultural. You even looking at just and yet we have the number of cultures who did not base marriage and these other things, as I've told you before, romantic love. Even romantic love is taught and learned. Yeah. People are taught how to feel. You feel that way. You should feel ashamed of yourself for behaving this way. And we're so unconscious, we don't even recognize it, you see. But we're doing what? We are dictating what? Yeah. Feelings, thoughts, emotions. What is love? The kids hear it all day long in their records, right?
You hear that? He's telling you that the culture tells you who to fall in love with. Isn't that something? Think about that. You think you fall in love with someone because these are your feelings, but you're dictated to. Your culture trains you how to feel. That's how important culture is. Your culture is your operating system. Just like a computer has an operating system, this is your culture. Now, what happens if you put a Mac operating system in an HP? It's going to malfunction. Now, you may be able to put some patches in there, but at the end of the day, it's going to be malfunctioning. And that's what's happening to African Americans right now. We started off with an African culture, and we got so many American patches in it that the thing is just malfunctioning, and we are going haywire. You see, why do I tell my sons I want them to be with women of African descent? Not only the fact do I want to see the faces of my ancestors in my grandchildren's faces, but I know if they come with an African woman or a woman of African descent, whether she be West Indian, whether she be from Africa, Afro-Latino, that culture is going to be more conducive to his Africanness. It'll be more befitting him. And then guess what? And I'm going to say this, kind of skipping ahead a little bit, the culture is passed down by the women. And so if my son marries a woman of African descent, it's more likely than not that my sons and daughters will have a more conducive culture because their mother will teach them that culture. You see? So this is why I support Passport Bros. I mentioned Dr. Marcus Mosai Garvey earlier. He would be proud of the Passport Bros. All the Passport Bros are doing is they're going where they feel that they belong. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, if you feel the need to pack your stuff up and leave this country, that tells you that this country and its culture is not conducive to your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health, and you're going somewhere you good. The reason they go places like the Philippines and South America and Central America, because those cultures are more family oriented. It's more we, us, and our, as opposed to me, myself, and I. So I get it, because above culture, we talk about race, but we got black people we can't even relate to. We got black people who are so far from their African selves, they'll never get back. You got people who you might have a Filipino woman who are more family oriented and more African centered than Black Americans, women, because here it's me, myself, and I. There it's us, our, and we. So that is more conducive. That is a match for an African man. I get it. So let's continue listening. I know y'all bored as hell. We're an hour into it. We're gonna keep going. You're gonna get this information. I'm gonna force feed this information to you. You're gonna be thinking about it all next week. And pretty soon some light bulbs are gonna come on. Let's keep listening.
The children up my spine. I can't get him out of my mind. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I can't. But all this is what? Defining what? This is the way you feel. If you're in what? If you're in. You see? And when you got that feeling, then you can do some other things. And you can, make some money. And when you study the history of romantic love, when the approach for building families and so forth first started coming up, there were many people who thought it was just a sign of madness.
Yeah.
Of a precarious basis.
And this is just an off-center point, but basically he's saying the idea of romantic love was something that popped up in the 18th century. Before that, most marriages were arranged. There were contracts of necessity. Your family has land. My family has a 1,000 head of cattle. We're going to get these two together. Bam, we're going to come together, and it's going to be greater for the entire family unit, the greater family. Again, the family is first, not the individual. And that's just another example of it. So somebody's saying the audio is bad. Is the audio still bad again? Or y'all, look, it's sped up. I sped up the audio so I don't get I thought everybody understood that. You guys understand that the audio has been sped up so that I don't get one of these copyright strikes. So just bear with me. The link for it is I put the link up in the chat room, but this is what we got. Okay. So just bear with me. You can slow this thing down if you want to when he plays and you'll hear it better. But let's keep going.
Pieces upon which to build family and culture, you see. But what we're trying to illustrate here is that culture, to a good extent through its conditioning process and other processes, models, helps pattern their ways of thinking and feeling and behaving, and pattern attitudes. Both the conditioning procedures and contingencies and the models are provided by culture. And of course, we recognize that that's one of our major problems today. That often the models that we want for our children's behavior have not been placed in our hands. That another culture has control of the conditioning mechanism and has control of the models that by which our children are socialized. We must recognize again then, if we are serious about enculturating our people and enculturating our children, then we condition their enculturation.
All right. So we don't educate our children. Somebody said the sound is really bad. I got it. I hear you. Y'all got to deal with it. We don't educate our children. We don't provide jobs for our children. So why should they listen to us and go get the education that we want them to get? You see what I'm saying? We have very little incentive for our children to do what I say. We can't punish. We can't reward them. We can't incentivize their growth. We can't do these things because our culture here in the United States, and there are people who have cultures that even throughout the United States and other Western countries, they're still able to what? Enforce their will upon their children and their culture upon their children, and they keep it tight and they keep it strong and they keep an incentive for them to follow through with that culture. But we don't have that. Why? Why is that? Largely because we don't have that African-centered reinforcement coming. Latinos always have new Latino people coming up here to the United States. So even if the women start slipping up a little bit, there's a new woman coming from Ecuador or Panama or Colombia that's reinforcing what the women and the roles of the women and the men are supposed to be in that culture. So their culture is constantly being reinforced. That family-friendly, family-first culture is constantly being reinforced. We don't have that here amongst Black Americans, do we? There's no place called Black Ameristan, right, where people are coming in on boats and flying in over planes or walking over here across land masses to get here. And so the culture is not the good parts of the culture that would keep it going are not that African part are not constantly being reinforced, which is the problem that we have, which is why it's deteriorating before our eyes and we're losing control of it. Let's keep listening.
You must gain the capacity to reward, to punish, and to reinforce, to model the kind of behavior for our children and ourselves that we need to model. Identity is achieved when, as a result of having undergone the identification process, the individual comes to perceive himself as possessing a distinct and unique character or personality, as being a person in his own right, as being able to answer the questions to his own satisfaction, to the extent that it is a cultural product. And identity is a cultural product. And I want to emphasize this because, you see, and I try to get across to people all the time that in reality there's no such thing as an individual. That is a social fiction. It is a type of label we use, but it does not exist. Let's see. A unique combination of our having with undergo. But who we are and what we are is the result of relations. It is not something that is completely unique to us and not.
What Dr. Wilson goes on to explain in this section, it says basically the individual exists because of the group. The individual exists because of the people. For instance, if you were truly an individual, then no one would be able to understand you because we wouldn't know what language you spoke. But because you're part of the group, we understand you and you've been socialized in your language, in your mannerisms, in your way of thinking, in your value systems, in your expected behaviors, your rituals, communication by the group. So that's basically what he's saying. So even when we say the rugged individual, the individualism that exists in America, that in itself is a fallacy. That's what he was pointing out. I think that was his greater point. But let's continue listening.
Culture. And remember, we said culture is ultimately contained what? In us. Mm-hmm. Then the individual becomes the what? Instrument of that culture. Yeah. You say, this is what I mean.
What he was basically saying, an African or an Asian or a person, you're still who you are no matter where you are, no matter what kind of suit you have on, what kind of clothes. I can put an African on Mars and he's still an African. I could put an Asian on the moon and that person is still culturally Asian, irrespective of their location. And so, yeah, you might be a Black man here in the United States, but at the end of the day, you're still an African, and an African culture is going to be your best operating system, whether you like it or not. Does it work here? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We see, but we know what happens when it gets eroded and you get these American patches in your African operating system. You see what happens to your computer brain. It starts malfunctioning, which is what we see happening to the Black community. Let's move forward. Hit the number 1 button if you can hear.
Lectures ago, when I talked about manhood, right? When I told you that manhood is a social definition, and to be a man is to be socially defined. Mm-hmm. So that in expressing what it means to be a man, in defending one's manhood, one also does what? Culture, and defends what? The culture. And in defending the honor of one's manhood, one defends the honor of the culture and the honor of the people. And therefore, ultimately, manhood is an expression of the culture, not of a chauvinistic wish on the part of a male. It is not to be defined in isolation and detached from the needs of the culture itself. That when manhood becomes defined, detached from the needs of the culture itself, detached from the needs of people itself, when boys are not trained into men relative to the so-called black on black violence. Boys who've been brought into manhood in ways that are detached from, you see, who have not engaged in training in an organic relationship to the Africanness. And therefore, since they are not socially defined, they then become antisocial in their behavior. So ultimately, you see.
All right, so that was a very important point, okay? What Dr. Wilson is saying is that we have a group of Black boys who do not truly understand their purpose as men within the African American community. Okay, many, and shout out to Chef Business Last. We get largely our notions of manhood from European based television shows, from European ideals of manhood and masculinity. Now, get it right. There are some commonalities between all races of people, all communities, all cultures that it's not just those notions of manhood are not just germane to one, but generally speaking, our perspective of the world should always be African centered. So our black boys should always know first, hey, I'm a black person. I'm a person of African descent. What can I do? What do I need? What role do I need to fill? What custom do I need to practice as a man to make sure our community, our culture moves forward? And if you got a bunch of people, a bunch of men who think, hey, it's me first, it's all about me, you're going to get a bunch of dope dealers out there. You're going to get a bunch of gangbangers who are willing to run up on a person of their own color and steal and rob from them. Because it's not about the community. It's about them as an individual. Being a man is what? Being able to provide for your family. Being an African is what? Looking out for the community. So if you have an African living in a black community who thinks he's an American, who takes that full speed that, hey, it's all about me, that African boy is going to be robbing those African people in that community. So that's not conducive to the well-being of that culture. Basically, you got a bunch of untrained young men in the community who don't know who they are and don't know how they should feel. Look at the Italians. Look at Italians, especially at the turn of the century. They understood community. They understood, hey, we're Italians. We stick together, family first. That's why even though the Italian mob had a whole lot going on as far as selling drugs and all these other things, there was nothing going on in Little Italy. It was one of the safest places to be because those mobsters made sure we take care of our own. And that's because they recognize that we're Italian. This is our family. That's their culture. We don't do that because our kids, hey, it's me first. Even our gangsters, it's all about me first. It's that individualism. It's about me, myself, and I, not us, we, and our. And so, this is something that we need to address. Now, we've talked about it, we've glanced over it, but nobody's actually hit it. But yeah, this is part of the problem that we're dealing with. Let's keep listening.
An identity and a personality, and through this personality, that the culture expresses itself, and the culture is perpetuated, and the culture has an impact on the world, and the culture expresses itself as power, and defends itself as a culture. But if it defends itself as a culture, it defends its members as people as well. They stand alone, and they are undefended. They become vulnerable, and others now destroy them one by one, here and there, and ultimately our people are wiped out.
And that's what's happening to us right now. Individually, we're being wiped out because we don't stand together.
Self-concept, products and instrumentalities, as much, if not more, political, economic entities than social, psychological entities. What am I saying here again?
Let's skip forward a little bit because I want to keep it moving here.
And therefore, what? Keeping other people's families alive, keeping them out of crime, keeping them well housed, that they advance.
Let me back this up a little bit. Y'all need to hear this.
Taste and interest and passions and so forth are not also transformed in particular directions. Despite their superficial attachment to African culture, they will continue to perpetuate their oppression and maintain the system that they think they're trying to get out from. You see?
Now, what Dr. Wilson is saying is, unless you train the people within your culture to have their attitudes and tastes geared towards things that will perpetuate the culture, then they won't. Again, I gave the example earlier of me having a yam farm and all the children in the community grow up eating yams. And therefore they teach their children to eat yams. And then guess what? Now we have a business that is catered to and maintained by the people because the people like this. This is what your religions are supposed to do. This is what your customs and your holidays are supposed to do. It's supposed to reinforce to your people, or reinforce with your people, the things that keep your culture sustained. So what happens when you begin to celebrate your oppressors' holidays? You are helping sustain their culture and reinforcing the dominance of their culture. This is the importance of celebrating your own holidays. This is the importance of having your own communities, your own schools, developing a taste for your own. We have all of these historically Black universities, which are often underfunded. If we began to feed those universities and tell our children, hey, go here, go there, it's the same education. But even right now, many of you are probably saying, no, it's different. The white man's education is better. That's because you've been told that. I find that interesting. The white man's education is better, but you still want some Black woman to make your potato salad. Right? Right? You see, it's just like that. Just how you could just start saying, hey, well, you know, the Black man's college is better. You could just start saying that, and all of a sudden your children will say, yeah, you're right. And then that thing will come true. That's how powerful you changing your taste it is. Just keep listening. We'll hit the number 1 button if you can hear me, though.
And this is why you have to understand the thing, so that you know where you're going when you're talking about educating these children African-centrically. You see, you have to reject multiculturalism, and that it's African-centeredness that must be taught to our children, not multiculturalism. Multiculturalism says, all right, everybody's culture is okay. You know, oh, you got a culture, I got a culture, all got children got a culture. You know, oh, you know. So, you know,
so basically what the brother is saying is that, you know, here we are with this multiculturalism. You got Black people calling themselves Black China. You know, you got Black people who want to be Italians. Look at the rap people, the folks that you got people calling themselves like 3-6 Mafia. Mafia is an Italian term. You see, I mean, just think about that. You're taking on, you're a Black person taking on something that's you're culturally appropriating something from someone else. What is your culture? Why not? When you start mixing cultures, you have no culture. If I mixed, I don't know, red and blue, it's neither anymore. It's like a purplish color, but it's neither red nor blue. If you try to say I'm African, but I'm multicultural, it's not going to work. Your operating system is going to fail. I want you to think about that. Remember, your culture, your people's culture is just like a computer operating system. It only works when the whole thing is Apple, or the whole thing is HP. All these patches are going to make it misfire. Shout out to my man, Cody Marshall. Y'all still there? I know you're bored as hell. We almost finished. Keep it going. Let's hit the number 1 button if you can hear me.
No, which is exactly what Black folk are doing right now. You see, and therefore what? Keeping other people's families alive, keeping them out of crime, keeping them well housed, you know, and all the things we're doing because we have not controlled our what? Taste and evolved them in ways that they advance our culture and us as a people. Please get rid of multiculturalism. And it makes you believe every culture is all right. Here you are suffering from Europe.
Think about that. You know, think about what the brother just said. Think about what he said. We like European cars. We like the Asians the ladies like the Asians to do their nails. We like American football. What else? We like American basketball. We like, listen to all these things. American clothes or European style clothes. How does any of this help us as people of African descent? You know, this is what our tastes are for. You spend $200,000, $300,000 for a Rolls Royce. That's great for the people over in England. You know, $250,000 on a Maybach Benz. That's great for the German people. But why can't your taste be for a Nigerian car? I'm just asking the questions. Huh? You'll go to a steakhouse and spend $500, but you won't go to the local mom and pop operated by the black family, right? By the African American family, and spend $120. And when you get there, you complain about the service. So you got to develop your taste for your people's things. I still live in a black community. I live in a very normal, average black community. Why? Because I like being around black people. I like my children growing up around black people. I want my children to develop a taste for being around black people. Now, I could have very well bought a house in a white neighborhood, and that'll be fine too. I've lived around white folks before, but when I had an opportunity to, I chose to live in a black community. A house, I could clearly buy another house if I wanted to, but this is what I chose. I chose to travel to countries that are dominated by black people or people of African descent. I take my children to these countries so they can visit with people of African descent because I'm helping develop their taste. This is my part in doing that. Now, the question you have to ask yourself, what are you doing? What are you doing to help make sure that you and your children develop a taste for African things? We sometimes will go to restaurants where, you know, Ethiopian restaurants, Nigerian restaurants, Jamaican restaurants. Yeah, we'll go to a steakhouse now and then. Hell, I live in Texas, of course. But the bottom line is I want them to see the people that are most important to them, their godparents, black people, people of African descent. Shout out to T. Sam. Your culture is your shield. If it's in disarray, it leaves you vulnerable, dangerous in ideology. Sir, I wish I could chime in to tell you the fight my business is having with HBCUs. All right, let's keep listening.
European culture, and now you're going to, it's all right. You can't put one down and put the other one up. I mean, Europeans amuse me anyway, talking about their cultural traditions and what great traditions they have brought to the world. The tradition is what you do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's an insult as an African man to have Europeans talk about their great tradition. The Nation of Islam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here's the great part. I want y'all to listen to this.
What Europeans call great tradition goes hand in hand with their capacity to kill.
Basically, he's saying, you know, you say your tradition is what you do. Your culture is what something else. Your tradition is what you do. And when talking about Europeans, yeah, one of their traditions is, hey, you know, we conquer and destroy, we take other people's stuff. But that's part of their culture. And you can imagine living in a hostile environment in the northern corner of the world where there's very little farming produce, the weather is harsh. You're going to develop a culture that says what? Me first. And so even looking at, there's a book, I think it's called The Iceman Pages. Is that it? Was it The Iceman? Come on, y'all. The Iceman Chronicles or something like that. You understand why those Africans who got lost in Northern Europe ended up so far culturally from their African selves. I think it's the Iceman Papers. But I want you guys to listen to this very carefully. Hit the number one button if you can hear me.
Kill. You know, the Germans, I couldn't understand. You know, we were the literary people and we were the, you know, this and that. But that's one of the reasons why you were able to kill the way you did. Mm-hmm.
Listen very carefully. Those of you guys who read my books, I tell you guys all the time, it's called The Iceman Inheritance. Those of you guys who read my books, Rules to Live By, How to Maintain Peace of Mind and Happiness in a Conflicted World, I spend some time discussing the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I am a Christian. I was born a Christian. In fact, I'm a Southern Baptist. I was born a Southern Baptist. I'm going to die a Southern Baptist. I love Jesus. Nevertheless, Elijah Muhammad was probably one of the most brilliant psychologists who ever existed in the United States. Okay. I want you to listen to how Dr. Amos Wilson breaks down the knowledge of that or the way in which the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his followers in the Nation of Islam broke those chains of mental slavery that white society had over black people. And I know I'm having a blackity black moment. I know I got some white folks in this chat room. I know y'all in here listening. Look, let me have my blackity black moment. This is a black channel. This is for brothers. You know what I'm saying? We gear this towards black men. I'm trying to help these black men become better men. And part of that is having a better understanding of themselves. Okay, this is what we do here on this page. We help build better black men. And one of those things is through knowledge and understanding. You have good knowledge of yourself and a good understanding of the world, you begin to see things differently. So yeah, I get it. I know I got all these people following me, but damn, I still got to appeal to my brothers, because this page is designed to do what? Uplift black men, protect black men and boys. That's what we do. But also part of that is teaching. Now let's listen to what the Honorable, what Dr. Amos Wilson has to say about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
But that's also, but that's one of the reasons he killed the way he did as well. This person, yeah, misunderstood. Because again, sometimes we're so right-brained, we let our dislike or disapproval.
They didn't look. You got to understand something. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when they popped up with the Nation of Islam, is like, who are these? Muslim. We's Christians out here. You see what I'm saying? What is it? Muslim scared of Jesus. That's why those Muslims, they had to go outside. They would literally, people like Malcolm X and the ministers for the Nation of Islam would literally go outside the Baptist church on Sunday mornings at 2:00, right? And they'd be out there. Well, actually, they'd be out there and they'd be preaching all the time. The people are going into the church, right? This is back in the 1930s. Still in America. Those of you guys who don't know who on you, but basically there was a gentleman named Wallace Fard Muhammad who came and taught a man named Elijah Poole this great message, this great doctrine. They called it Islam, but it was a different kind of Islam. It was an Islam of the West. It was a black Muslim Islam. But nevertheless, it was necessary at the times, because in the 1930s, black people were brainwashed. They loved white folks. They loved everything about white society. They wanted it. They feared and loved the white man. There was a white Jesus in every black person's house. So even our God was white at the time. So what you hear happen is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his teacher, Wallace Fard Muhammad, they came together and they came up with what we know as the Nation of Islam and the teachings that they call. So let's listen to what the brother, as an observer, somebody who was there at the time, listen to what Dr. Amos has to say.
Certain of his behaviors overshadow our capacity to see what gifts he brought us as a people. And to come to really,
they thought he was just a troublemaker and crazy. That you got to understand our people at the time. They didn't want to touch him. Okay, but let's keep listening.
Understand what this man was about and the greatness of what he created in the Nation of Islam. Yeah. Because we let the series of events get to it. Like, we want to throw the baby out with the wash water. It's to that cultural identity, religious identity, psychological, whereas economic or psychological. You see,
your cultural identical was as political as it was psychological. It was as economic as it was psychological. What is he telling you? What he's telling you is that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad realized that he had to infiltrate the psychology of the black man and the black woman in America at the time. Because without that, you are not going to get political change or economic change. So he had to permeate those brains. And so what were we fixated on at that time? White folks. They was God to us. They could do no wrong, even though we know they was doing some wrong. And we were still, doing pretty damn bad as far as segregation, Jim Crow, and all that other stuff. Matter of fact, black folks was getting up out the South. It was so bad. So it was a whole, even in the North, it was bad. They had unions that wouldn't let black folk in. It was a horrible situation. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad realized, I got to penetrate these black people's psychology. So listen to one of the first things he did.
And he recognized then that he had to also change the taste of black people.
He had to change the taste of black people. Listen to this.
And change their what? Interest.
Change their interest.
As well. Their emotions and their what? Feelings as well.
Look at the phenomenal arduous task that this one uneducated man from Georgia took upon himself. How did he even realize this? This is why the members of the Nation of Islam say that Wallace Fard Muhammad was God himself come visit the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was at that time a man known as Elijah Poole. Because no man with a third grade education would come up with this. That's basically what they said. This had to be God, because my God. And if you read your text, the prophets do come to people. God does send his great teachers to certain individuals. I mean, this is what they're saying. But listen to what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad came up. Remember, this is 1930s. Keep listening.
And a part of that change was projection of the white man is demon mythology.
Listen, I want you to hear that here, bro. This is funny to me. I always thought this was just hilarious.
Which was very functional, real.
Listen. Okay, I want you to hear this, and I'm going to break it down.
And change their what? Interests as well. Their emotions and their what? Feelings as well. And the was projection of the white man is demon mythology.
All right. So look, I'm going to have a little fun with this. Shout out to all the white people. I'm going to hurt your feelings for a minute. I want to explain to you what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did for his people. Basically, you all remember one of the famous scenes in the movie Malcolm X. He said, the white man is the devil. The white man is the devil. And people would, oh my God, oh my God, what is he saying? We're the devil. Okay, I get it. Now, I want you to look over the past 10 years. Have you heard any Nation of Islam ministers referring to white men as devils recently in the past 10, 15, 20 years? Probably not. Why? Because there's not a need to do that anymore. Okay? But here's what you got to understand. In the 1930s, black people hated themselves. They worshiped white people. White God was associated with a white Jesus on the wall with his long flowing locks. God was the white man. Okay, so what do you do when you're attacking anyone? And I break this down thoroughly in my books. Those of you guys who've read my books, the Yellow Book, you understand the strategy. I talk about this. But basically, when you fight somebody, you don't hit them in their weaknesses. You hit them in their strengths. So if you got black people and the hold that white people have over them, are very religious people, these black folks, we love Jesus, right? We love God. Even as African people in the motherland, we had strong worship systems. So if you tell us that God is white, we're going to bow down to white. The white man is the policeman, the judge, the school teacher. Yes, boss. This is God. Okay. So what did Elijah Muhammad do? He figured out, hey, I got to demonize these white people to make them say, whoa, I got to leave this white man alone. And then what did he do? They pumped out a whole bunch of facts talking about the atrocities that white folks had committed around the earth, even though all people committed atrocities. You don't believe me? Ask Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan killed a whole lot of people. You understand? Africans was killing a whole lot of people. But the purpose was to demonize white people so that would loosen that stronghold, that image of white Jesus and goodness and all that had encapsulated as far as the black mind. In other words, think about it. There was white cake was called angel food cake. A chocolate cake was called devil's food cake. Just think about that. Everything white was good and everything black was bad. So Elijah Muhammad turned that on his head. And he said, no, matter of fact, the white man is not only is he not God, he is the devil. And they did that. And that made black people say, well, hold on a minute. I can't be around here worshiping the devil, and especially this man is giving me all these facts, telling me all these horrible things that black folks, white folks have done around the earth. It'd be Jesus. So this is what he's saying he did. And as a psychologist, he saw it, and as a strategist, I see it. Most of you don't see it, and there's still white people that's offended at the fact that Malcolm X called him devil all throughout the 40s and 50s. But really what it is a psychological tactic. White people are no more. We got white devils, black devils, Asian devils, green devils. There's plenty of people who are devilish out the world. Matter of fact, most of the people in the Bible who were doing devilish stuff was not white people, because white people just popped up 6,000 years ago. If you look at the geneticists, they'll tell you that the DNA for blue eyes and pale skin or white skin or skin absent melanin is a relatively new phenomenon in the world of genetics. I think actually it's 8,000 years. And you just Google it, and it's there for you to see. So, these societies that we talk about that pre-existed white folk, there was just black folks out there like that. So them devils that you're reading about in the Bible, them was black devils that we're reading about. So, of course, everybody knows that devils and horrible people and bad people exist in every race. But for the purposes of freeing his people from the shackles of mental slavery, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad put his ministers out there, filled them up with historical facts, and used biblical references to what? Demonize white peoples to help break the chain hole, to help break the chains that this white racist system had on black people. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. Keep listening. Keep listening.
Which was very functional and real.
It was very functional and real. That's one of those high order jokes to say, yeah, it worked well. And goddamn it, they had facts to back it up. You said, I know white people mad. Shout out to the white people. Don't be mad at me, baby. We just, we trying to free my people over here. Keep listening.
But very functional. People think this wasn't the point. It wasn't the point. It amazes me now. Somebody mentioned the Tuskegee experiments. These whites are going to tell all the truth now. Now that they got the world wrapped up.
Yeah.
That protected the what? The myth. Because the myth, the major function of the myth is to organize people. To organize people's perception of themselves, to give them a sense of unity and commonality.
And it's brilliant how Dr. Amos flipped the script. He said, yeah, now that white people had the whole world locked up, we can go ahead and tell them the truth. Yeah, we fucked y'all up pretty bad. But, it's okay now. You're benefiting from the American dream. Don't worry about it. No different than what he just said. The myth that white people were devils and demonic was necessary to organize black people. It was a necessary evil, no pun intended, at the time, and it served its purpose. That's why you don't hear the ministers, the student ministers out now referring to white men as devils and white people as devils. They don't do it anymore because it's not necessary, because they managed to break those strongholds. Look what happened after Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz came on the scene. After that, then you get the Black Power movement, the Black Love, Black is Beautiful, all these black songs that popped up about how we love blackness. You don't get that in the 1920s. You didn't get that in the 1910s. You didn't get that in 1895 and whatnot. They were still singing old Negro spirituals, waiting for white Jesus to come save us. It was only after the Honorable Elijah Muhammad hit us with that psychological electrode that shocked us into saying, hey, we need to love ourselves. The white man, it was brilliant. And then he says, some of you might have missed this, but now he's talking about how, after white men and white folks accomplished the world, they didn't need to lie anymore about the inferiority of black people, right? We know y'all made all them pyramids down. There's still some of them still trying to say that the aliens came down and made it, but the intelligent ones among them know. They've read the history books and they know where this stuff came from. Are y'all bored? Hit the number one button. We are almost finished. I promise. I'm just trying to get through this. Please bear with me.
To arrange their social relations in such a way so that they could achieve particular points and particular ends. And it's not that they didn't know that the Egyptians might have been African. It was in their literature. That's a lot of where we got it from, isn't it? But at the point where a mythology of Africans is being served to organize them and create a unity among themselves and to create a set of relations that permitted them to make a conquest of the globe, they projected that mythology.
So basically what he's saying is, in order for white people to come together and get this thing called white supremacy racism together, they had to say, well, you know what? These people are inferior. We built everything. We're greatness. Let's return our greatness. In order for us to win the moment, we're just going to spread this deception and lies. We need to do it. All the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did was figure out, if it worked for them, it's going to work for us. This is why you should study your adversary. This is why the 48 Laws of Power tells you all to mirror your enemies. You can learn a lot from your enemies. Sun Tzu tells you all the time, know your enemy. Know your enemy and you will win what? How many battles? You will win 100 out of 100 battles if you know your enemies. A lot of you all don't study your adversaries. Many of you say, oh, I don't want to study what the white man has to teach. Shit, white people dominated this goddamn globe. You can learn a lot from them. Brilliant. You don't have to run the world the way they did. I mean, but they've done some magnificent things. You know, but again, these are also human beings with a different culture and a different set of ideals, and you can learn from everybody in the human family. Don't be like that. Okay, because what you learn can make you better. Shout out to Red as a people. Randy Irvin, shout out to you. Andrew, new member, thank you so much. Keep listening. Let's hit the number 1 button.
And it was a powerful one. Now that they think they have it made, they say, well, yeah, you just weren't you. Oh, yeah, we did give you TV down there. You know, what are you going to do about it? Oh, now we're becoming honest folk. You know, but what happened? No banks are changing hands. No changing hands.
He said, "Yeah, we did y'all wrong at the Tuskegee experiment. Yeah, we know we've been lying to y'all and telling y'all the Egyptians were white. We know that was we did lie. But now that they got everything controlled, it's cool. They can do that. Now we can be good people, right? We good people. We sorry, but no money is exchanging hands. You ain't got no reparations. Hey, you ain't gave back no buildings and no land, right? That's what they said. Now that we're free and clear, we can tell you, oh, that was just bullshit. We were just lying to y'all the whole time. You see what I mean? Which is kind of it's brilliant. It's the same thing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did. Yeah, they're demons. These devils, these white devils, it served the purpose at the time. It served the purpose at the time. It was what was necessary. And they held fast to that rhetoric for about 50 years. And then I remember around about the early 2000s, they said, okay, we're making a change. I even remember when the Nation of Islam stopped holding their meetings at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, which was after the time that the typical churches would let out, give people a chance. You could go to black church and then you go to Nation of Islam. They start changing the time to 10 p.m. because it says now it's time. We've been established long enough. Now it's time to compete. You see, now it's time for us to go ahead and compete with the traditional black church. We're no longer outside, we've established. I remember that. I remember that time period. And so, when I look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I look at a brilliant man who many black Americans don't realize just how brilliant this man was. And I think at this time, what I see, he would address the black community in a very different way. If the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was here in his brilliance, it would be a lot more, I think, based on what I know, they would be a lot more aggressive out on the streets addressing some of this immorality that we have, kind of like they were back in the 1930s and 40s when they had a whole bunch of bad stuff going on in those black communities up north in the Midwest. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come right back. Y'all hit the number 1 button if you appreciate what I'm doing. I hope y'all appreciate what I'm doing. I know this is a long video, but I think it's worth it, man. Y'all hit the number 1 button and we'll be right back.
And ago. That's when I came to That's when I came 1 month ago. That's when I came to know about it. 1 month ago, that's when I came to know about it. After listening and watching a lot of videos, I've come to realize that these men are very innocent. Some are wonderful people. They are wonderful people. And now they want to scare. So why is it so hard for you to do that? So why is it so hard for you to do that? And why do you keep making these hateful videos if you don't want them? We want them. They are good people. We want them. They are good people. So they are wonderful people. What is wrong with that? So what is wrong with that? If you cannot cook, if you cannot clean as a woman. If you cannot cook, if you cannot clean as a woman. Actually, how do you take care of your hygiene? How do you clean that wig? How do you clean that wig? How do you clean those nails? I don't understand you, ladies. I don't understand you, ladies. They are going overseas for women that are not beatable. Honestly. What you're doing to yourself, you're humiliating yourself. You are. There's no way you can insult your fellow women. There's no way you can insult your fellow women just because we are submissive. Your Bibles, a woman was meant to be submissive. A woman was meant to be submissive. Leadership, and it's for men. Leadership, just because you're making money, just because you're making you a man. Money doesn't make you a man. If you feel like you're a man, please get your girlfriend pregnant, and please let us know. From there, we will respect you. But all I can say, please let us be. And let the passport bros be. And for the passport bros, kings, you're wonderful. Please don't settle for less. Please don't stop even making these videos.
Move in silence.
Move in silence.
Do it. Go where you are
Do
accepted.
it. Go where you are
loved.
accepted. Go where you are loved.
Taken care of.
Go where you are taken
care
care
of.
of. You see, a woman was meant to
There's no way the world
support
is
a
fighting
man.
him when
There's
he's
no way the
hustling
world
to
is
give you a
fighting
good
him
life,
when
and
he's
he comes
hustling to
from
give you a good life. And when he
fighting
comes
because of
from
gender
you are
equality.
fighting
You see,
because
there's
of
nothing
gender
like that here
equality.
in Africa.
You see, there's nothing like that
Do
here
you
in
know why
Africa.
our men take good
Do
care
you
of
know
us?
why our men take
Because
good care of us?
we are
Because we are submissive.
All right, welcome back to the broadcast. What's up? I know we moving slow, baby, but we doing it, man. We getting through this, man. It's a slow moving.
No real control of your destiny. But you're multicultural now. We have greater understanding of truth. It's got to be that. You got to do more to tell the truth. You're going to reparate yourself. We're going to take these reparations from you. You can admit we Egyptians if you want to, but it's not the end of it. No way. And we, black people, can't fall for the okie doke. Oh, they say we're Egyptians. Ain't that wonderful?
Keep listening. Hold on.
Looking for the better life and the better feeling. Europeans, all the products for waste in us. And then other immigrants come in and get the products under their control. And we as African people then support and feed all of them while we starve our own children. And consequently, you learn that the only way they can get money out of our pocketbooks is to knock us in the head and pay. That's in a planned sort of way, and following tastes that have been created within our own culture and so forth and so on. Because we've told them that buying things European and pursuing things European and so forth was what it means to be alive and to be real and to be free and the whole bit. And yet it's the pursuit of those very things that has imprisoned us and will maintain us in prison. This is why I've told you many times before that we will be most enslaved. Yes.
All right. All right. So look, that's a great place to end this video. If you look in the, if you take a look, I just put the link to that video here in the chat room. I want you guys to do some homework, listen to the last 15 minutes of that. But let me give you a quick summary of why we are the way we are right now as Black people in the United States. Okay. This is not a race thing. Let me say this again. Black women love to come into my chat room and say, you hate Black women. But there are 2 billion Black women on the planet. So you saying I hate all of them, or am I talking about a specific culture that has turned Black American women into a group of whores, along with a large section of the rest of American society? Now, some of you all don't like when I say that. Some of you all don't like when I point out the behavior. But again, I have a understanding of what's necessary to maintain a people, and that is a culture that allows for the people in that culture to enforce and punish members of that culture. What we're looking at right now is a group of women who are not accustomed to being punished for their bad behavior. For the past 10, 15 years, it has gotten much worse in Black America. You have Black American women who are now willing to have sex in places like Jamaica. And I'm not talking about prostitutes. I'm talking about women with degrees. You can't tell them anything. They're above shaming. In fact, they have things now called, what is it called? Fat phobic. They got the slut walks. You cannot shame women for being obese and overweight. You can't shame them for exhibiting whorish behavior. You can't shame them for being poor mothers. Hell, you can't shame men for being thugs and criminals, right? Because what? This is where our culture has gone, right? If I say, hey, these people who are committing all these crimes need to be punished with death, I get an uproar on YouTube. People are angry with me, but these same people are causing harm to other people. They're causing harm to their own people. Any self-respecting group of men and women who want to maintain their own culture definitely would agree that those who are killers amongst them, those who hurt the old, those who prey on the weak, those who prey on the children, they should be removed from that group. So let's do this. What happens now, 10,000 years ago, if you got a group of women who are having sex with every other man in that group? You have instability in that group. because now men are using their resources to pay for this. You got men who are taking care of kids that aren't theirs. Everything is scattered about. There's no unity. There's no order. And that 150 people in that group dissipates. That's what's happening in the Black community. There's no order. There's no structure. There's no way of punishing those with bad behavior. What you see me doing is taking a harsh hand towards the women. You see me protecting the men because there are enough people keeping the men in line. There are enough people out there chastising Black men, but nobody has held Black American women's feet to the fire. And unfortunately, fellas, without them, we will not be able to sustain this culture past 2050. Let me say this again. Without the Black American woman, you will not have what we call foundational Black American culture. And as it is right now, you men don't even want to have sex with these women, much less have children by them, which is why you have 55% of Black men who are not married and don't have children. Shout out to medium men. The vast majority of these children are being sired by a very small percentage of men. So why is it these women are making these choices to choose these small group of men? I don't care. But what we must do is begin to shame them for that choice so as to deter them from doing that. That's why I call them these hoes, which is a Basque word, which means come here, of course. But that's why you have to begin to reinstitute the use of shaming. That is why I am so harsh, because what do? I provide cover to those good women who would shame them also. But for many years, many Black American women, the good ones especially, were afraid to say anything to these ratchet, no good skanks who were sleeping with everybody's man, who were having children by the same group of men and destroying the community with these bastard babies who are running around here doing all sorts of crazy stuff because they don't have father and they don't have structure and there's no discipline. Until you begin to do that, until you begin to shame the women back in line, they're going to keep teaching those tenets of that. They're going to keep teaching that culture, me first, whatever I want to do, that Europeanized, Americanized culture to the children. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. That's what you see happening right now. We have to reinstitute shame in the community. We have to go harsh. We have to be hardcore with it. And let me tell you something like this. Any man, and I want all you blackity blacks out there, all you so-called Black woman protectors to listen to me very carefully because I want you to hear me. Those of you who are protecting Black women who are exhibiting this whorish behavior, which is destroying the Black community, you are truly the enemy of the Black community. You protecting these Black women who are helping destroy the Black community are enemies of the Black community, and you will be dealt with like an enemy. I know many of you all think you're doing a good thing by protecting, oh, he's saying bad thing about Black women. No, I'm saying bad thing about whorish behavior being exhibited by Black women from this culture. I'm saying thuggish behavior being exhibited by Black men in this culture, this dangerous, violent culture. I'm the one that said I would line these motherfuckers up, these killers, these criminals, these dope dealers, these people out here preying on, and shoot them in their fucking heads because that's what they deserve. And that's what they need to hear, because trying to be nice to them, trying to be kind to them, yeah, brother, I know it's the system. Fuck that. You killing other people's children with your hard drugs and your gangbanging mentality. Your ass needs to be put in the grave before you put somebody else's child in the grave. I'm the one that said that, because that is the type of punishment, that is the type of rhetoric that they need to hear to correct this culture. Not that soft shoe shit. Oh yeah, brother, I know you in jail for a triple life murderer because you RAPE'd 3 young girls and shot 5 folks in the head. Fuck them and fuck that. This is not where we are. And the same goes for these lovely ladies who are exhibiting this horrible behavior, which is destroying the reputation of Black American women, the good Black American women, the decent Black American women, the wives among us can't even peep their head up because we as Black men are not providing cover for them. Because some of you men are so weak and pussy whooped that you would rather just ignore the horrible behavior of some of these Black American women and just pretend like it doesn't exist because you don't want to confront them. That means that you're less than a man. If you're not out there advocating on behalf of families and advocating on behalf of morality and putting these women in their place when they're out of line and making us all look bad and making us a target and making us a laughing stock of the world, then you are a sellout. You are the enemy of the Black community if you're protecting these Black women, especially you motherfuckers out there complaining. Because see, let me tell you something else. I've got more complaints. I done had people calling me, and I'm a right to borrow on you ever since I exposed how Black American women were going down to Jamaica and paying for sex with these rent-a-dreads, and even going so far as to paying young underage boys for sex. I had the testimonies up. It was that that drew the most fire. Not only are we talking about immorality, but we are talking about illegal actions. And I'm going to do my very best to make sure if any of you women are found doing that, you go to jail like every other pedophile should. Now, what are we doing here? You want to know why the Black community is where it is right now? You want to know why the Black community is on its deathbed? The reason is because the men have laid down. It's because you men have become so cowardly that you're afraid to speak up to these big, badass Black women. You're less than men because you're afraid to hear the chastisement of these women. That makes you I can't respect that. I respect no man who is not willing to speak up and put his woman in this place. How are you expected to go out and fight this big, bad white supremacy that you're afraid of if you're afraid to put your woman in her place? You can't even fix your own house. How can you be respected at the seat of men around this world if your woman is on TV twerking on tables, being everybody's whore, showing her ass everywhere she get, cursing loud, rolling her neck? That you garner no respect from the rest of the men. Your women are out of control. And because your women are out of control, they're teaching your children it's okay to be out of control. And neither your woman nor your children respect you. And you too cowardly to make them fear you. I don't want any more of these leaders from the past. I don't want any more of these woman worshiping leaders that we've had. All you pastors and preachers, and even you Muslim, all you religion, y'all go sit yourselves down. Your day is Sunday. We don't need you for this one. What we need is strong men to stand up and say, hey, we need fathers, we need husbands, we need strong men to stand up and say, hey, this is not tolerable. We're not going to tolerate this. We're going to call you out where you are about your behavior. Just like Black men do for each other all the time, we call each other out, which is why we are the ones that call each other Dusties and Pookies and Ray Rays and such and so on. We do that to each other. But we also need to do that for these women. She is not God. There is only one God, and that is the Most High. And he commanded you as a man to be the natural leader and natural head of your household and your community. And it's on you, Black men, to get the community in line. It's on you to bring back chastisement. It's on you to bring back punishment. Stop feeding these whores with your time, attention, and resources. Make sure you uplift the good Black women. Make sure you highlight them. Make sure you give them your attention. Make sure you praise them. The women who are cooking and cleaning, make sure you take pictures of the beautiful meals that your wives and girlfriends and fiancés have created. Make sure you highlight that. Talk about the trips you took your beautiful wife on. Hell, she might be ugly at this point. In fact, not in shape. Still, she's a wife. Uplift them, not the whores. Stop clicking likes on their Stop hitting the like button on their Instagram pages. This is what I'm telling you. You reward the good women with your attention, and you punish the bad women with your chastisement and your shame. This is how we begin to bring this culture, which is dead and on its deathbed, back to life. That's a simple way to do it. And some of you all don't like what I have to say, but I don't care. I want you to hate me. I want you to hate me with all your being. I want you to wish death on me. I want you to hate me. I want all of that. Give me all of that. Because as long as you are paying attention to me, it don't matter. As long as you hate me, you still watching. And you're going to learn something. You're going to learn that this is what's necessary to heal us as a people. And most of these dudes are not man enough to tell you that. Most of these so-called black men aren't even man enough to put you in your motherfucking place, even if it's going to save you, ladies. Most of you women confuse hate with love. If I didn't give a shit about you, I'd be back on that island that I was on in 2016 with my hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars, not thinking about you motherfuckers. That's where I would be. But see, you see this as hate, me trying to correct your bad behavior, which is your problem. And that's your problem that you're going to have to deal with. I appreciate y'all. This is Uncle D. God bless you. I hope you learned something. Please go take a look at Dr. Amos Wilson. Excuse the profanity, but I meant what I said. I do love you guys. We do have to make some corrections in the black community. We got about another 27 years before admixture, black men who are dating out, black women who are dating out or not having children, before we just disappear as a group of people. And so the race of people, the culture that created jazz and hip hop and built and came up out of slavery and built all those HBCUs and the black churches, all that is going to disappear. Why? Because our culture is deteriorating. Our culture has become something that does not sustain the people who practice that culture into the next generation. It is now unsustainable. And until we begin to actually do something about that, we're going to continue down this path. We got about another 27 years. We have a less than replacement level population in the United States as amongst black people, non-Hispanic. 1.7 to be specific. And if it wasn't for that 12% of men who have multiple children by multiple women, we would have less population growth than white people. And they on their way out. I want y'all to think about that. Think about that. When you don't think it's an emergency. Why do you think I'm screaming and hollering at y'all? I told you, you guys saw earlier, I want my sons to marry women of African descent. I would love for them to marry some African-American girls who understand African culture and who love their blackness and love themselves. But you really can't find them here. And if you add in the fact that I want them to be able to appreciate a black man and not think he's a nigga and no good, all these stereotypes and a woman who actually loves black men as opposed to hates them, that's a whole nother problem. Most of us can only find that when we go to the motherland or when we go places where men of African descent run those countries. So the women are in line because the men are able to enforce the culture, enforce the punishment in the culture. We don't get that everywhere, especially here. So yeah, hate me if you want to. I'm cool with that. I appreciate your hate. I like your hate. I'd rather have real hate than fake love. I don't need your acceptance. I'm accepted by the Most High. I accept myself. I love myself. Accept your own. Love your own. Either way, God bless y'all. I appreciate you. This is Uncle D, as I always said this time. I'm out.